In the show The Silo, the people live underground and are shown a screen of what's outside to keep them inside and compliant. It's to remind them that if you step outside, you will die. But at the end of season 1, the finale, this is a bit of a spoiler, but at the end of season 1 in the finale, Juliet walks outside of the silo and doesn't die. She does this on camera in front of the entire silo, watching this moment of revelation. And it calls into question the legitimacy of the entire system. If it's possible to leave the silo without dying, then why are they living underground? But what we find in season 2 is this public revelation doesn't actually change the system. The people in power lie to retain their power, and they manipulate the truth to retain their control of the silo. The revelation of truth did not by itself change anything. I mean, everybody in the silo saw it with their own eyes, and yet the system continued. The machine kept on moving. Why is that? Why does that happen? Why doesn't truth necessarily produce change? That's the question I want to talk about in this video. To think about this, I want to bring up Reinhold Niebuhr. He wrote about this in his book, Moral Man and Immoral Society, which he wrote in 1932. I think he has a lot to say about this question of why doesn't truth or education or the spreading of information actually produce change in a system. Now, to be clear, he's not cynical about truth. He's not saying that truth does nothing or that educating people or sharing information is unhelpful. He acknowledges what the spread of what he calls rationality can actually do to fight injustices in a system. I'd like to read a quote from his book. But before I read the quote, I should preface, when he says rationality, he's talking about education, helping people think logically, spreading information and truth. So in short, he's talking about people knowing the truth. So here's the quote and what he has to say about what truth can actually do in fighting injustices in society. A growing rationality in society destroys the uncritical acceptance of injustice. It may destroy the morale of dominant groups by making them more conscious of the hollowness of their pretensions, so that they will be unable to assert their interests and protect their special privileges with the same degree of self-deception. It may furthermore destroy their social prestige in the community by revealing the relation between their special privileges and the misery of the underprivileged. It may also make those who suffer from injustice more conscious of their rights in society and persuade them to assert their rights more energetically. So he's saying that truth can do a lot of things, and it can do a lot of good, and spreading truth and information and helping educate people does accomplish good things. But it has its limit. He writes, "Men will not cease to be dishonest merely because their dishonesties have been revealed or because they have discovered their own deceptions. Wherever men hold unequal power in society, they will strive to maintain it. They will use whatever means are most convenient to that end and will seek to justify them by the most plausible arguments they are able to devise." And then he writes this line, which I think is important. "All justice in the less intimate human relations is political as well as rational. That is, it is established by the assertion of power against power, as well as by the rational comprehension of conflicting rights. Truth is necessary, but it is not by itself sufficient. Justice requires the assertion of power against power." Well, what does that mean? What does asserting power against power actually look like? It sounds a little violent, and honestly, historically, the assertion of power has often looked violent. But what Niebuhr was getting at was, is there a way we can assert power against power in a non-violent way? You might not have heard of Niebuhr, but I'm sure you've heard of Martin Luther King Jr., MLK, the nonviolent protests during the civil rights movement. These kinds of organizations were heavily influenced by Niebuhr's writing. So when Niebuhr is saying that we need to assert power against power and that truth is not sufficient, he is not advocating for violence. In fact, he is doing the exact opposite. He is saying we need to find ways to apply pressure and assert power in ways that are non-violent. Because the people in power do not stop lying just because everybody finds out that they're lying. Something needs to be done. And this brings me to something that's happening in the real world that I think illustrates this perfectly. In November of 2025, Congress voted almost unanimously to pass the Epstein Transparency Act, which said that the Department of Justice needed to release the Epstein files in their totality in a searchable format with only redactions to the victims' names by December 19 of 2025. Well, December 19 came, and only a few documents were released with heavy redactions. And after about a month, they finally released in January half of the documents. And again, with ample redactions, many clearly redact the names of the perpetrators against the law while failing to redact and protect the names of the victims, which have now been made public because of their failure to redact them. As of today, when I'm recording this on August 14, 2026, there have been 0 arrests, 0 investigations, 0 perpetrators held accountable for their crimes that have been revealed in the Epstein files. No perpetrators in America have faced consequences for their actions. The public witnessed a jaw-dropping revelation in January, and nothing was done. No change came about, no consequences, nobody held accountable. It's just like Niebuhr said. And now I want to read this quote from Niebuhr again, but now with the Epstein cover-up in the back of our minds. Men will not cease to be dishonest merely because their dishonesties have been revealed or because they have discovered their own deceptions. Wherever men hold unequal power in society, they will strive to maintain it. They will use whatever means are most convenient to that end and will seek to justify them by the most plausible arguments they are able to devise. What we've been witnessing in regards to the Epstein cover-up feels the same as the season 2 of The Silo to me. Everybody watched and witnessed this public revelation of information and truth, and yet it led to no actual change. And in fact, the people in power have tightened their grip, manipulated the truth, redirected public's focus so that they don't have to actually do anything with these files. And that's why Niebuhr is rolling around in the back of my mind. Truth is not enough. There must be an assertion of power against power. And again, Niebuhr is not talking about the violent expression of power. He is talking about nonviolent pressure applied to those in power to create actual change. Now, what does that look like in our context? I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to start talking about this a little bit more on my YouTube channel. Don't worry, it's not going to completely become about the Epstein files, but I wanted to do something to feel like I'm actually, talking about this and spreading awareness, though I acknowledge truth by itself is not enough to make a change. There needs to be actual activity. And I'm saying, I don't know what that is. I would love your guys' help to help me come up with what does applying pressure in this situation actually look like. Thanks for watching.